Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Guitar Guts podcast hosted by me, Mark Murray. My guest today is the very talented Nili Brosh. You can follow her on Instagram at Nili Brosh. She's a beast of a shredder. She has a couple albums out on Spotify. She'll have another one coming soon. Hopefully, we'll find out some details. Maybe by the end of the year. I think so, hopefully. But her other albums that she's already put out are great. Hey guys, before we get into the episode, I wanted to let you know that the Halloween album that I did with all my friends is out now. It's streaming all over the place under the band name The California Werewolves. Put it on your Halloween playlist, play it all month at work, tell your friends about it, play it at your Halloween parties, bookmark it for next year. We did metal versions of This Is Halloween, Dragula, The Misfits, the Ghostbusters theme song, Dead Man's Party, Somebody's Watching Me, Thriller, and more. It came out really awesome. I'm really proud of it, and if you want a physical CD, I'm only doing burned copies, but they're going to be available on my website for $5 or DM me on Instagram, and I'll set you up with my PayPal information. It's streaming everywhere now. Amazon Prime, Apple Music, iTunes, Deezer, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Google Play, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Napster. I mean, it's everywhere. So wherever you get your music, go check it out now under the California Werewolves, or check it out under my page on any of those under Mark Murray, and you'll find it there too. Stay tuned at the end of the podcast, and I'm going to play another track off it. This Is Halloween by the Citizens of Halloween, aka Danny Elfman, one of the theme songs from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now let's get into the podcast.
Hey Mark, how's it going?
It's going good. What's up, Nili? Am I saying your name right? Nili?
Nili.
Okay, I didn't know I think I might have said Nili on the intro, actually, and then is your last name Brosh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks for coming on. It's nice to see you over there.
Yeah, you too.
What are you drinking? What do you have? Water right there?
Yeah, just water.
I'm still drinking coffee. I think you live in California, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the same time zone. It's noon, but I love coffee, so I drink it till like 2 p.m.
I'm jealous because I ran out of coffee this morning, and I was so mad.
Oh, no, that's the worst.
Yeah. I didn't even run out. We had an ant attack yesterday, and I had to throw out a lot of stuff, and I just, this morning, I just had nothing, and I was, no coffee.
That's horrible.
Of course, yeah.
You strike me as the type of person who wakes up pretty early in the morning, and you seem very active online. You have you're hiking.
Thank you. It's true, but it doesn't even feel like it's by choice anymore. I wish I could sleep in. I think just because I had late gigs all the time forever. I think now that I have a little bit of a break, I pass out early and wake up early now. I can't do anything about it, but try to make the most of it, right?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I've been following you for a couple years on Instagram now, and I listen to your albums all the time. I gotta say, you're a monster guitar player.
Thank you.
Your 2 albums that are up on Spotify already are excellent, and I see you're putting out another album pretty soon. What's the details? What can you tell us about that?
So it's a concept album. It's my first album that I considered to be that, and what that is it's literally, it's called Spectrum. It's literally a spectrum of styles. So I just, I started writing in a lot of different styles several years ago already, not really on purpose or anything, but I guess I have different influences from different places and places in the world and stuff. And so I kind of started coming up with different things, and I was just kind of but this doesn't, this is kind of all over the place, how can it be, material for one album? And then what I realized is that, every one of these styles somehow meshes together with another style that's got similarities to it. You know what I mean? It's never as far as you think from something else. As music is kind of all the same. And so to me, it just, all of a sudden, it just kind of came together and felt like this is literally kind of a rainbow of something fades from one to the next using commonalities between the genres, but you end up starting in one place and ending up in a completely different place by the end. And hopefully the feeling will be that it kind of snuck up on you and you didn't even realize that it was happening. that's the hope. We'll see, but it's getting there. And then, if the concept works and everything, theoretically, you should be able to play from the end to the beginning and have the same effect, just backwards.
Wow.
So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's just theoretical. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, but that should work too. I mean, it's the same thing, right? So, yeah.
How far are you along with going through with it? Is it all written? Have you recorded it all?
It's almost. I'm almost done recording, so we're very close. I don't want to like commit to a release date that I would later have to change. So I'm really trying to be responsible as to not say anything about that until I'm like 1,000% sure. But we're close.
So with your writing process, are these songs that you've been working on since the last album, or is this stuff that you just sat down and you started hammering out new material?
Kind of in between. I mean, I've had a lot of time since my last album, actually, and a lot of different work that I was doing in the meantime. And for the first year or two almost after my last album came out, I really felt like I don't know what to say right now, because I felt like I'd put everything into that album. And as far as like, that kind of progressive shredding, whatever you want to call it, goes, I just kind of felt like, well, I've said everything that I have to say when it comes to this right now. And I really didn't feel like I had anything else. But then, I guess it would make sense that that's when things that are very different started coming out to me, and I was just some of the songs like are all nylon string guitars, or one doesn't have a lot of guitar at all. I mean, it's just ended up being so, different and diverse that I was just kind of like, well, I have to go with it, because I guess it is logical that would be my next thing to come up with after I felt that way.
Is it going to be instrumental?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you're writing them and you go into the studio to start recording them, is everything pretty much done, or do you improvise on the spot, or do you have it pretty much planned out exactly what you want to do?
It depends on what the song is and also like what the record is, but with this sonically, just because there's a lot of different styles on them, and a lot of them, there's a lot of like dance influences and stuff like that. So I wanted a lot of the drums to actually be fake on purpose, like just because it was a sonic choice in this case. So it wasn't the same kind of instrumentation or players that I'm used to. It required hiring different players, like an accordion player and a percussionist, and things that I haven't really tried before. But where I'm going with this is basically I have a producer named Alex Argento. He's a keyboard player. He played a lot of keys on my last album as well, and he's kind of the mastermind behind putting all the tracks together, and a lot of them that require a lot of programming and stuff, because my skills with that will only go so far, so I wanted to hand that off to someone who like understands the project and understands me as a musician, and also has such a wide skill set in a lot of different kinds of music to kind of bring that all to life, especially because you need something to uniform that album, so it kind of fell that like he's building a lot of the arrangements from my demos, like kind of from the ground up. So when I get what I actually record on, it's almost like a finished mix, pretty much. I just kind of have to like lay my guitars on everything. And because I've had so much time with the music working in this process, at this point I'm fairly certain with like what I'm putting on top of it. So it's not necessarily that it was planned, although I guess it was a little bit more to the plan side, but it's just that, it's gone through such a process already that by the time I got what I need to do to go on top of, I'm ready to go, So I've had my time with this music. I've had my time with it, I feel like.
That's awesome. So when you're writing your recording demos and stuff like that, are you writing it in like Guitar Pro or something like that, or do you just hit record and start jamming and find out what comes out, and then do you program your drums, or how do you do that with your demos?
That's a good question. So for me, it's I'll come up with a song idea, usually, hopefully in my head, and I'll sing a melody into, voice memos, just so that I don't forget it and whatever, and make whatever notes I have for what I think the arrangement should be. If I can hear, either the chord progression is usually obvious after the melody comes into my mind, but it's just kind of like if I have more ideas for the arrangement or certain things that I'm hearing in that moment that I don't want to forget, I'll make notes about that. And then what I'll do is I'll just start programming the demo in Logic. So I have, libraries of sounds and stuff like that. And I just kind of craft all the instrument. I mean, I play guitar obviously, but I craft all the other instruments to the best of my ability and the best of my knowledge of the song. And that way I at least have something finished to give to the next person and be like, well, this hopefully just gives you enough of an idea to take it the rest of the way, and some of them are not that different. It's not about necessarily changing anything or everything, but it's just about, hearing what is supposed to stay and what is supposed to get better, and that's somebody else's skill set that I'm happy to hire. So, yeah.
With your your first two albums, did you work with somebody like that who was producing it and doing that too?
It was a similar process, but not in that much of a specific way. It was like I'm still making those same demos, but now I'm just sending them to a drummer, a bass player, a keyboard player, and it's a little bit more, because the instrumentation was very straightforward. It was kind of like that, but each one of them had their own take on what their instrument needs to do, and it's kind of the same thing, just by different people. So I've liked that way of working because, I don't concede that I'm more than what I do. I play guitar, I write the stuff, but, I can't compete with like the expertise of a really great drummer or a really great bass player. That's their job, and it should be their job, like it should be a collaboration. So for me, it's just like the trust part in finding the person that I really think like, okay, they're really going to hear where I'm going for or what I'm going for. That's the hard part, is the finding the person or the people that you trust to do that. And that can change, from record to record, but it becomes a security blanket, So
that's very wise, because as a solo artist, I also do the same thing. I write my own music and I do my own albums, but I produce them and I do all the work, and it becomes just my vision. But to bring in other people, like, it's so hard to let people take your music. But like you said,
yeah.
when you're handing it off to the right people and that's their expertise.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very wise way to do it, I feel. Are these people you've worked with, like, or is it people you met through Instagram or like online or other musicians? Like, how do you meet the people that you've had on your albums?
It's usually people that I work with or have worked with, or referrals, you know what I mean? And sometimes it can come from social media or something else, like you just never know. I think it can be a challenge to stay open to that all the time, especially when you get attached. I mean, at the same time, you are talking about humans and people that you connect with and everything, but there is a big world out there. And I think that's why it's good to not, write in the same style of music all the time, because you don't know who you're going to end up finding, or who's going to be that person that, that's their expertise. And then they take that vision to somewhere where, like, I could only hear 30% of where that should go. You know what I mean? Maybe if I felt like, I can make my stuff sound really, really nice on my own all the time, and like, maybe it would be different, but that's not where I spent. I mean, I've spent a lot of hours there, but not as much as someone whose job it really is to do that.
I also really like that you said that you like sing the melody into a voice note and then you figure out and go from there, because I think a lot of people, they have problems getting the sounds they're hearing out into the instrument, and they're sitting down and just one by one, they maybe don't know the chord progressions or scales that they are even hearing in their head. So
yeah,
they end up with something that was not what they pictured at all, which, it's kind of a bummer when you try to sit down and write something that's in your head and you can't get it out right. So
yeah.
The voice memo thing's very cool. That's smart.
Oh, thanks. I mean, listen, it's that. I'm not going to tell you that what you're describing isn't part of the process, like I used to write in a lot of different ways. And like, to me, when I hear something in my head, whether it's like a little bit of the idea and I really have to fight for hashing it out, like you're talking about, like, it's all, it's all part of that journey to being able to hear it easier. I mean, it is a skill like every other skill, and it takes years to make your head a little less foggy when it comes to that, so it's not to say that it always comes easily or that it always just is right there, but sitting and honing that skill, I think, is important, because to me, like, every way of coming up with something is valid. But to me, it's like if I hear something in my head, I argue with it less. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I just feel like, well, this may be good or it may not be good, but like, it's obviously what I meant because I had no control over it. I wasn't trying, you're not trying to judge it or change it when it just comes in. You know what I mean? That comes later. And then it's a choice of what you're going to do with it. So I think, you know, I have had a lot of frustration in that area over years, and that part sucks. Like, I know, I hear what you're describing and I like cringe because I hate that feeling and I get it. But like now I just feel like, well, it's such a necessary part of the process to make it easier. And I think it's worth it, you know?
Yeah, a lot of times there's a definite process because I'll sit down and I'll write something, and at first I think it's kind of cheesy. I'm like, this is stupid. But then over the next couple days, I'll come back and I'll mold it a little bit, and then a couple days later, by a week or two in, it's something badass. And then I'm like, wow. So now I understand that when I sit down and write, it's not going to be the coolest thing ever, maybe the first couple of days I'm working on it, but it's going to always become something, or I'll just keep molding it. Or, you know, a lot of people are probably giving up on songs because they don't understand that that's part of it, that it's got to go through, you know, some rigorous beating and molding and
sometimes,
shaping.
yeah. Sometimes, yeah. I mean, it's funny that you mention it and you say it like that. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but that's actually kind of where the title from my last album came from, because what you're describing, that like mental process of like, you hear it a couple days later, you feel totally like different about it. You don't know where it's going to land. Like, you can't be objective about it. Like, I went very, very deep down that rabbit hole with that album, you know, and I thought that I hated it, you know? And so what you're talking about is exactly what I sat there and did with that album for a long time, until I kind of, you know, I love and I hate the phrase polishing turds, because it's just like, that's how you feel sometimes, you know, that's not, but that may not be objective. That was exactly why it was so mentally like tough, you know, because it's like, well, just because I think it sucks, does it mean it does? Or is it just, do I think that because I wrote it? Do I think it's better than it is because I wrote it? You know, like, it's just, there's so many things. So the only thing I know to do is what you're saying, is just like working on something until it's like, okay, I can at least live with it. And I don't want to play it down. I mean, I wouldn't have put it out if I wasn't happy with it, you know, but that's definitely, I really do believe that that's the artist's struggle. So it's funny that you bring it up exactly like that, because I made a whole album about it, you know?
And it's so funny, too, because you never know. Like you said, you might be looking at it wrong because you wrote it. You might overrate it or underrate it. But then
Exactly.
once you show people the parts of the song that you never even thought that people would love that part, you're like thinking about this other part. They love the part that you didn't even expect anyone to love. And you're like, really? That's the part that's really stood out? And I don't know. It's just, you never know how people are going to take it in.
That's true. That's true. I mean, and, you know, like, I'm happy to say that, and I do think that this is why, but I mean, I think because I went through that whole process, the stuff that I ended up writing for this record came so much more easily. And even if not in writing, then at least in accepting it or believing that I'm good with it. You know what I mean? And that, to me, it almost like doesn't matter how the music comes out, because that's a gift. You know what I mean? But I really do think that that's why, like, I feel much stronger about this album, you know? And so I think there is kind of like a light on the other side of it, that like, it's not in vain. Like, you're going somewhere when you're working through all that stuff. So
what is your musical background? Because when I listen to your albums, you have very technical writing. I know you're a Dream Theater fan, so maybe some of it comes from the influence from there. But did you have music school, or did you take lessons? How did you get so advanced with your progressions?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm the youngest of four, so I have three older brothers that listen to a lot of, you know, 70s and 80s music that me being born in 88 probably would not have been exposed to otherwise. You know, but when I was growing up, I grew up in Israel, you know, and I was exposed to a lot of different things. And, you know, it's going to sound silly, but being a kid in the 90s, you know, I watched the European MTV all the time. So I had a lot of pop stuff coming in and a lot of like Middle Eastern stuff around me, or, you know, guitar stuff from my brothers and that kind of thing. And so when I got into middle school and high school is when I discovered Extreme as my favorite band with Nuno Betancourt. You know, he made me, you know, really like think about like, wow, this is so cool. Like, it can be metal and it can be funky, and like, I never heard that kind of thing before. And, and of course I loved more than words. Like that's how I got into it, as a kid, just, I didn't know that the rest of the record sounded completely different. But, from there, I found out a lot more about, those genres and everything, and found players that spoke to me, and that just kind of became my language. But now as an older person, I kind of tend to branch back into like other influences, just because I'm like, well, that's where the music is, and the guitar is just kind of like what is my instrument to say something with, but I still want to like go where the music is,
How old were you when you moved to the U.S.?
12.
Okay, so your whole family moved here?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you guys come here?
Well, actually, funnily enough, is my brother Ethan Brosh, who's also he's a great guitar player. He wanted to go to Berkeley, and my parents, my dad found a job that would relocate him to the States, and they just kind of decided to. They had made a previous U.S. relocation in the past, like they weren't completely foreign on how to do that, or how the U.S. works and stuff like that. I was very lucky when it came to that kind of stuff,
So I'm guessing English is not your first language then, right?
No, it's not. No, Hebrew is my first language.
How crazy was it to move here? What age did you start learning English?
I knew English when I moved. I don't even know like how I knew it, but we all kind of learned it from TV and and movies, and music, lyrics and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of at one point just felt like I could speak it. By the time that we moved, I wasn't really. That wasn't the tough part, it was the cultural like difference was so big, and in a way that no one could have really truly prepared me for. So the language wasn't really for me the challenge in it.
Where did you guys move to?
Boston.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a crazy place.
Yeah, well, we live in a nice suburb and everything. My family still lives out there and all that. But now, being out on the West Coast for some years and everything, I know that, it wasn't for me, but at least I get to do something about it as an adult person,
I'm imagining the difference in just the weather when you're moving from Israel.
Yeah,
it's like a desert.
No, again, it's funny. You're hitting like everything, like the nail on the head of everything today. Cause like it took me so long to realize that like I'm not like I get like really depressed in the winter and all that stuff. Like I didn't know how that was going to manifest itself. I just knew one thing, and then, I thought it was going to be cool to see snow, but like, oh my God, I can't do that life. It's not for me.
Were you playing guitar when you still lived in Israel?
Yeah, I took like classical guitar lessons when I was very young, like 7, but I wasn't really serious. Obviously, like most kids, don't really practice or anything, but I had some basics and I always had it around me and everything. And it was actually when we moved that I got my first like electric guitar and started taking lessons. And then it was really in high school that I really started getting serious, like on my own. But I wasn't, growing up in my house too and everything, like you were always around it. So,
So you got your first guitar. You started going playing more in high school. Did you play in bands and stuff, or were you starting to write music back then?
Yeah. I was doing like as much as I can, and I was practicing a lot, and I was spending a lot of time learning songs by ear and learning solos by ear. And I still tell my students now that like that's what I spent. Probably if I had to log my amount of practice hours over the course of my life, that'll probably come out to be what I spent most time doing. And now it's still the quickest way that I learn something. Even if I have the chart as well or whatever, I'll probably choose to do it by ear. And, that gives you so many skills that a lot of things won't. And I can't like stress enough, like how important I think that is. So, yeah. And I did, I had a lot of friends in school that played and we would jam. And then we had also like a really good jazz band in school that went to competitions and all that kind of stuff. So I did both the formal way of doing it and like the hang type thing. And then I went to Berklee College of Music after that. So then I got plenty of music school.
How much did your level of skill change from when you went into Berklee to when you got out of there?
I think it was a lot. It's hard to say because like, I don't know. Also just like even between the ages of like 18 and 21 or 22 or whatever, like you're still like such a young person, you know? So even though there's a big difference between being 18 and being 21 and having like 3 more years of experience in schooling and all that stuff, like I know that that had a large impact, but I always felt like all the real life experience playing and touring and stuff like that that came after that, that was when I really felt or saw a change. You know, like I know that school did a lot for me, and like I'm sure that if I was to look at the details at the time, I would have found like, oh yeah, sure, like I've improved here, I've improved there. But when I really started like feeling the difference, let's say, is like when I really was thrown into like real life stuff.
I see. So you're there for 3 years? That's
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a 4-year school. It's just, you know, you can do summer semesters if you want and kind of do it a little bit quicker. And, you know, the tuition seems, you know, to have a trend of rising every year. So we just kind of, my family and I, you know, came up with this plan for me to just graduate as quickly as I could and, you know, do that whole thing. So
your brothers play all of them? Do they play guitar?
Just my brother does. Yeah. But
Just
I mean,
one
you
of
know,
them.
like, yeah. Yeah.
Does he show up on any of your albums?
Yeah, he did play on my first album, on the song Hat Tricks. There's some like flamenco guitars that he played on it, actually.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you guys jam together ever? Where does he live? He's back in
We
Boston?
did, yeah, sometimes. I mean, I don't get to like come home that much, but we did do one tour together, which was cool, and we used to do shows together and stuff.
That's so cool. So what's your main acts? What are you playing right now? When you go over, I see you got your rack over there. You got like 5 guitars on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I recently left Cirque Du Soleil, which was my main gig, and now I'm just focusing on more solo stuff with my band, or whether I'm going to go out on my own, and then I'm doing a Dethklok gig in November as well. So those are my the things that I'm focusing on right now.
So which guitars are you playing for each one of those projects?
So for Dethklok, I don't know yet what we're gonna do. It's a C standard tuning, and we're talking at Ibanez at some choices and stuff like that. I don't know what we're gonna do yet, but I'm about to do a clinic tour in Canada next month. I'm actually leaving in like a couple of weeks. I'm like looking at the calendar every day, looking at how few days I have left to practice, but I'm planning on probably bringing 2 guitars. So this is the 550, RG 550, and I've been pretty attached to this guitar, as everybody on the internet can see. But, you know, it's I'm so used to playing 7-strings because of like the gigs that have required it, like playing in Tony McAlpine's band and stuff like that, and a lot of my writing on my last album kind of accommodated for that. But then when I left for Cirque du Soleil and I was playing 6-string all the time, it just, I mean, it's not like, you know, it really changes anything, the fact that I'm playing one or playing the other, but it's just, you know, they're all guitars, and somehow the music that I was writing and playing was kind of starting to live on this a little bit more and a little bit better. So I'm definitely going to need this one on tour for some of the new stuff that I'm doing. And then I'm going to take probably this 7, which is the 1527. It's discontinued, unfortunately. I think it was like they told me when I got it in 2012 that I got like one of the last ones, and that they gave the other one to Skrillex.
Oh, that's
Which
cool.
I was like, all right, cool. But yeah, it's got EMG 5766s in them, and they kind of smoothen out the sound for me. And I like the maple neck, making things like just a little bit brighter for some of the lower register stuff. And actually, I have another 7 that I would love to take, but the problem with this one, oh my god, is that it's heavy as shit.
Why is it so heavy?
It's mahogany body, that's why.
Oh,
so
dang.
The white one is basswood, and this is mahogany, and I don't know how much it weighs, and it's crazy because, you know, at Cirque, like, all the guitars were so freaking heavy that these all seemed like nothing, but now it's just like I have perspective again on what's really going on, and I'm just like, Yeah, I don't know if I want to do a whole tour with this guitar, even though it's just like it's such a beefcake, but it sounds like it too, you know. So, and it plays great. It has the same pickups. Um, so yeah, sometimes I'm just torn, you know, because this is one of my guitars that just like somehow always the setup always lasts. It always stays in tune. It always plays great. But I think it's, you know, it's just because it's so massive, you know, it just maintains everything. So I'm the one who ends up suffering.
Dang. I've never tried the 5766 set. How would you describe those?
Well, to me, they were kind of, you know, the way that they were introduced to me was, you know, because I was always a passive player. And I still kind of think of myself as one because, you know, I do like the dynamic range of passive pickups when you have a lot of gain and you can ride on the volume knob and stuff like that. So to me, they were kind of introduced to as the set that, you know, is an active set for a passive player type of thing. And I actually, you know, I had DiMarzio Blaze pickups in that guitar before, and that I really liked. And then, you know, I kind of went and I A/B'd the whole thing, and you know, the trade-off was not very big, but I just kind of felt like I was trading off some of that for like a lot of smoothness in these pickups. So, and that helps me in a different way too, you know, because I try to play as smoothly as possible. But yeah, I mean, they don't feel active to me, you know, and so I guess that's part of it.
I'm gonna have to try those on one of my next guitars because I keep hearing good things about them. So, um, How many guitars do you have in your collection? You seem like you're quite the gear nerd.
I seem like it. Yeah, I mean, I just end up, you know, playing a lot of different things because I need things for different gigs. But if you ask me personally, I'm not a huge gear nerd. I'm just the person that likes to have what works. You know, I'm kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there's you know, over the years with needing different things for different gigs, you just kind of rack up a lot of stuff. So this is just the beginning. There's like a pile of cases over there somewhere with a bunch of stuff that is probably not in very good condition at the moment. But, you know, it wasn't any way that I had planned it, you know, but I just, again, like, my career in the last few years just became being the person who jumps in and does different things, and it could be once and it could be twice, and it's great to feel like people think they can trust me. That's great, you know. And so I always end up needing a new thing, or they're like with this Dethklok thing, you know, it's like none of this stuff is going to work, even though you think it should, right? And it could, but what, you're not going to have a pointy guitar and it has to be a 6-string and it has to be a certain tuning and, you know, all those things. So there's another guitar that I wasn't expecting to have, right? You know,
you're kind of like a female John 5. You're like playing like all these styles, and like everyone's like, you know, you're rising up and just becoming like more things, collecting skills. It's really cool.
Thank you. Like that was my goal, you know, like I definitely wanted to be a diverse player. And, you know, I found out very early, I think it was in high school, that like I was happiest when I was doing like more than one thing, more than one direction. Like I needed a couple of different things, you know, and I just love music. And now the funny thing is that you mentioned it, because it is great. And I love that part of my career, but at the same time, like I would love to also have like a more permanent gig home, because just for my own feels, you know what I mean? Like I would love to have a community, because I always feel like I get attached to everybody so quickly, and then I go and I do one thing, and then I leave and I go and I do the next thing, and I'm just like, I'm always saying goodbye to somebody. Somebody's always crying. It could be me, it could be someone else, like, you know what I mean? Like that's a wonderful thing, you know, but like I'm always the one like that. I feel like I'm that person that's leaving, and you know, I hope like to find something that could be musically fulfilling in the longer term too, you know.
I saw one of the things that you were jumping, like one of these like gigs you're talking about, was you jumped in for Zepparella and you played some stuff. It's so funny that you call yourself Jewy Page too. I thought that was hilarious.
I'm so glad that I thought of it in time, you know, because people ended up thinking that was funny. And to me, it's just like, I just have these like silly music. You know what's funny? It's like, you don't really think, I mean, you know, it's out there, you know, it's public, you know, everybody can see it, you know, but you don't really think about it like that. You're just kind of like, you know, with your phone, like having your little thoughts or whatever. And so I just kind of, you know, a few years ago, I just decided to like just say fuck it, and I'm just like, I'll just like say whatever, And sometimes like the reaction almost embarrasses me because I'm just like, I can't believe I said that. But whatever, like as long as you're not, I can say about myself, right, as a Jewish person. So as long as I'm not hurting anybody, I'll do it.
It's hilarious.
I'm glad.
That's so cool too. So Metalocalypse, you're going to be playing. Is it with Brandon Smalls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so there's it's an Adult Swim festival in LA. It's on November 15th and 16th, and Dethklok is headlining, but Mike Keneally, who is normally the guitar player for that, is going to be on tour with Devin Townsend. So Brendan called me and asked me to do that gig, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do that gig, especially because, also I went to Berkeley, so for us, that's like that's an additional level of love for that whole thing. So I'm very, very, very excited for that.
That's a huge. That's such an awesome opportunity. That's where you met him. You met Brandon in. It's Brandon, right? Not Brendan.
It's Brendan.
Brendan. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad I asked. So you met Brendan at Berkeley?
No, I mean he went to Berkeley, and Metalocalypse was like huge when I went there because I just went like right during the time where it was aired and a really huge thing, and then some of the other players in Dethklok were also Berkeley people, and it just. I don't even remember how I met him. I just ended up having so many people in common with him that I met him like many times over the course of several years, and we were always kind of like in touch and friendly and stuff. And I couldn't believe that he had thought of me. I was just like, yeah, of course, that's not even a question. So it was very, very, very humbling.
That is so cool. And you guys are playing in LA. I'm really, really close to there.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's a festival. It's in the Bank of California Stadium.
Oh shit! You guys are playing a huge place.
Yeah. It's going to be a huge festival that Adult Swim is putting on.
I'm seeing Iron Maiden there next month.
Nice. Yeah.
Damn.
I think I'll be on tour when they're here. Unfortunately, I haven't seen Maiden in so many years. So
yeah, you're a Maiden fan?
Yeah, of course. I mean, who isn't, right? I gotta correct that at some point. So
I'm noticing your giant collection of Ibanez guitars. You must have some type of relationship with them. Are you endorsed with them? And then
yeah, I've been with them since 2011.
How did you get involved? How'd you meet? Get involved with them?
I think it was around when I started playing in Tony's band, and I needed a real 7-string, for tour and everything. And we just kind of came together and we were like, is there anything that we can, do together? And worked out ever since.
Wow. So, are we going to see a Nili signature model, or like you were saying, you're so diverse, you might need like a whole line?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of why it's so tricky, because like I've thought about it, and I really like, I don't know what I do, and it just, for me personally, like really just personally as a person, it's not a huge goal of mine. Like it would be cool, but I've had to adapt so many times that to me, it's just kind of like, if it's the right thing for this, like I don't put that much more thought beyond it. I know that if I have enough time with the instrument, I'm going to get used to it. I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't have specs or things that I like better than others or know where I need things to be. But, at a certain point, it's just, it's all different, little variations of the same kind of thing. Right. So I don't know. I mean, one day, hopefully, I just, I don't know what it would be yet. So
I'm noticing you got a whammy pedal back there. What have you been using that for?
Yeah, that's actually it's funny. Man, I should really remember to move things out of the shot. No, but I've used it a bunch on this new album, like on some of the stuff that I've been recording. Some of the more dance-inspired stuff that I mentioned before, I'm actually using it to blend into some of the keyboard sounds that are on it. So some of the keyboard melodies I'm doubling, but I'm fashioning a very processed sound that's kind of meant to blend with that. So that tool has been instrumental, for lack of a better word, in that process. I love this thing. So
they're so much fun. I actually just recently bought one too, and I've been using it a little bit. Like, they're crazy, and Dragon Force and Buckethead and all these guys, and of course Tom Morello. Everybody's been using them for a while, but when used right, they're really a fun thing to play, like drop in there.
Yeah, I mean, they're a very versatile pedal, you know what I mean? Like there's very creative ways that you can use that in not necessarily the way that you see everybody else doing it, but just because it has so many like pitch options and ways to manipulate pitch, you can really run with it. So I definitely, that's one I like. I have a lot of gear that like just racks up that and it's part of the reason why I'm not like a gear nerd, because I'm like, I don't have room for more stuff. Like I'm trying to like not rack up more stuff, but that's one thing that I'm like, well, I know that has a place and a purpose. And, like I think of myself as a basic kind of player when it comes to tone. I've always gotten my tone mostly from the amp and like just a couple of pedals that are essential. I don't feel like I need a lot of effects or anything. And so coming into more textured stuff and sounds that need more building, like something like this can really help a lot. But for me, traditionally, at the same time, it's not like I don't need a huge board of a bunch of crazy stuff. I'm usually pretty simplistic.
Do you record with amps normally, or are you using like simulators these days, or like a Axe Effects or anything like that?
I use the Headrush pedal board for a lot of the internet stuff that I do, just, because it's a really quick way to record and it sounds good. But for my records, I mean, I'm still very old school when it comes to miking the amps and tweaking the tone and all that good stuff.
What's your preferred amp?
I have next to me, I have a PV-JSX.
JSX, very cool. So miking the amp, cranking it up classic style, like all the real metal people.
Yeah, well, I mean, these things have a sweet spot, like some of them sound better cranked, some of them sound better. I mean, and it's different when you put a mic in front of it too, so you kind of have to get to know what your amp. And again, those are reasons why I try not to rack up too much stuff, because you can really go down a rabbit hole of not knowing what sounds better or worse. And you may not even really be making such a really big difference at the end of the day, because it's still your fingers, and how you manipulate the strings and the instrument, and the amp is just going to react to that, So if you found something that reacts to it the way that you think sounds good, go from there and try not to fuck with it too much, I guess, You
mentioned that you got a lot of like dancey, like, is it electronic? Is that fair to say, music coming on your new album?
I don't really want to put one word on it, because it sounds like one thing to me and it's going to sound like something else to someone else. But it's just I would say that there is some stuff like that on there, but it's such a mesh of stuff now that like people will find that influence, they'll find other things in it. So I'm trying to be really careful when it comes to labels, because people, words like that really do mean different things to different people sometimes.
I've been noticing there's like a trend lately with a lot of like, Polyphia's kind of doing it with like more electronic style drums. Chon, Mick Rocklin, all these really advanced guitar players are now starting to go to like an electronic mix in with their technical guitar playing. It's really interesting to see this, new genre kind of emerging. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you would necessarily think that it's the same direction, but like, I mean, I know what you mean, and I really like that, but for me, it's like, I don't know if it's going to end up exactly there, just because where I came to it was from a different perspective, like what I actually want to keep from that music is the keyboard melodies and some of the more hooky stuff that you hear in some of that stuff. And to me, like, everything is kind of built around that. And so I'm trying to make the guitar fit into that mold rather than the other way around, in a way. So it might meet in the middle in a different place than it does for some of the other bands that you mentioned. And sometimes I wish that that's, what I could do, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's still you and it's your thing and it's your stamp, and it's going to end up where, sounding like you. So we'll see. I can't, again, I want to be really careful with like putting words on it, because just like we were just talking about, I can't be objective about my own stuff at all. So
are you planning on Are you planning on putting out any tracks early, like a single or anything off the album early, and start getting people excited?
Yeah. So yes, I have a single coming out with a music video on September 3rd. And it's my first music video. I've waited till my third album because I wanted it to be the right song, and I know that I have it now. So I don't want to say too much about it, because I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. So I would just wait for it to come out. It's called Primal Feels, and the single will be out together with the video on the same day, and you'll be able to get it everywhere.
Wow, I can't wait to hear it. This is so cool.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. So we'll see.
So the Cirque du Soleil, what is this the Cirque du Soleil that I've heard of, that this giant production that you were performing in?
Yeah, so I did, they have like a bunch of touring shows, and then they have resident shows that live in different places in the world. So I was in Vegas doing their Michael Jackson show, which is at Mandalay Bay.
So, and you were playing guitar, and I saw you were dressed up in like this, I think this is the pictures I saw, you had like this gold, crazy, like, big, awesome costume.
Yeah. So I was a character in the show, playing live guitar and running around with the other characters. I wasn't like doing flips or anything like that, but I still had a very athletic job to keep up with all those other guys on stage, and it's a totally different production, even though to me, I was like, I'm still playing effectively Eddie Van Halen solos, you know what I mean? But it's the context is very different. So it teaches you a lot to adapt to that, mostly how to run in heels and stuff like that. But yeah, your performance chops definitely sharpen.
Was that something that was like any type of goal of yours, or did an opportunity open up?
What was the first part?
Was that like a goal? Like you loved Cirque du Soleil, so you wanted to perform there, or how did you?
It wasn't a goal, but that show had had like an open casting call for a female guitar player when they first creating the show, like 2012 or something like that. And then there was an opening a few years ago, and it happened to work out, and I knew enough about the show to know that like it was a gig that I wanted to do. I wouldn't say that it was like a dream of mine to be in Cirque du Soleil or anything, but for me, like what really was cool was the way that it just put together like athletics and music for me, because no other gig can really do that, and it's definitely very easy to sink into the musician thing and the musician world, and just, and I'm very fond of that world, and I know a lot about, a lot of people, and all that kind of stuff. But it was really nice to just kind of feel like here's this other skill that, I used to have in my life in a big way, but I was never going to be a professional, but this is a really cool way to combine those two things in a professional setting in a way that I never thought would be like available to me. So I definitely really enjoyed that part of it as well.
How long were you performing with them?
I was there for 2 years, and we did 10 shows a week. So you do the math, but it was a lot of shows and felt like a lot of time.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. So I'm like, your chops must have been so sharp because you're playing all the time, hours, every day.
Yeah, I was playing a lot. I mean, even if it was just because, you only had so many hours to do your other stuff, and I was in Vegas, and I couldn't tour, and I didn't really have the opportunity to do other stuff because I was so busy all the time, but because of that, I really started pushing the internet stuff a lot harder because I didn't want to disappear for a couple of years, so, and plus, I really felt like if I don't, play guitar or do something creative with the rest of my hours, that gig is so repetitive that, I couldn't even get through 1 week of not doing something else, even when I was really tired and had no energy for it, because I like 1 week like that, and I was already like, oh my God, my creativity is like just going to die. You know what I mean? Like you needed another thing that felt like less robotic, as much as that show's amazing, but it's very much the same thing. And you do so much of it, you get to 100 shows, like within like, the first 3 months, you barely feel like you got there. You're already like, it's a crazy, crazy factory.
That's crazy. So the whole time you were with them, there was pretty much the same set?
It's the same show.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's not crazy, when you think about their perspective, like that's, and it's not to say that like, the show doesn't go through little tune-ups here and there, little changes or whatever, but like, it's the same thing, it's not, you're not going to have a lot of variety. You kind of have to find the variety around it.
I figure, it keeps getting more refined and more refined, kind of like with the song that you write, and then soon everybody is just so dialed in and knows like exactly what they want to be doing, exactly where they're going to be, like everything's perfect.
Well, you have to know that, because you don't survive there for very long if you don't. Even like physically, like the theater itself, like, is such a death trap in every way. You have holes on the stage at different points and things that you could run into and things that are moving all the time. You have to know like the routing of every person who works on stage pretty much, and everything, because every person's moving like some huge tower, so if you don't know where you're walking exactly when, like, it can actually be really dangerous. So part of the whole training to be in that show is a lot of like safety stuff and safety trainings, and especially because you also shoot fire out of your guitar. So
you were shooting fire out of your guitar?
Twice a night.
Wow, how does that work? Do they have like a big tube that runs up with gas and like a lighter or something?
No, it's all remote. So there's a firework on the back of the headstock. It's just like a little firework. Well, it's not that. It's a 30-foot arc of fire, but the thing is small. But it's connected behind the headstock, and the pyro team has the guitar to kind of set up right before the show. So it starts off the show. It's during the beaded solo. It's like at the end of the beaded solo, you kind of like play the end of the solo and you shoot the fire, which is really cool. So you're getting that instrument like 2 minutes before going on stage, because they're very, you want to make sure everything is safe. They teach you how to not point it at stuff, but it's really, you have a remote team that just kind of like sets it off at a certain time, and they're watching to see if like anybody is like standing where they shouldn't be standing, or if anything goes wrong, it doesn't fire, and like I can signal them in a certain way if I see something and I think that it shouldn't fire. But most of the time it just, I think I can count on one hand the times it didn't fire. So it's pretty locked in, the whole thing.
Geez, that's really cool. I wish I've never shot fire out of my guitar before. Now I have a new goal.
If it makes you feel any better, a guitar is heavy as shit, and it's caused me a lot of physical pain. So there's always a trade-off.
So do they come on like an in-ear monitor or anything and say like, all right, we're counting down 3, 2, 1, or is it like the exact beat and everybody knows where to be, so it just happens?
Yeah. I mean, you know exactly when it is, and you have exact blocking for every part of the song and everything, so you know exactly where you are standing, exactly what angle you're aiming, and I mean, again, it's like that's all part of the character, and it's a part of the training that you get, and you feel like you want to be responsible about it because you're, handling 30 feet of fire that is very real and can hurt a lot of people. So you definitely learn to be alert, because, it's, there's reasons why we sign contracts.
When I listen to your playing, I consider you at like an elite level of like shredding. You're not like full speed, just mindless shredding. It's technical and it's advanced. Who are the players that you look at that kind of influence you and you think like, oh my God, that is so awesome what they're doing?
I mean, I had a lot of players like that, but like I mentioned before, Nuno Betancourt and Greg Howe and Guthrie Govan and Andy Timmons and Paul Gilbert and Steve Lukather and Tony, obviously. And I mean, it's just, there's something to take from so many of those players, and I think people don't realize a lot of times is that, there's a lot of things that sound flashy that are not very hard to do. And there's a lot of things that don't sound as flashy and are very difficult to play. But to me, I don't even really think about it like that. I just kind of, I think, I want to be musical first. I want to have a musical phrase. And then if that phrase ends up being very dense in terms of amount of notes, that's fine. There's a place for that. And, that's why it happens in specific places in the music and where I hope it makes sense, but to me, it's just another, it's a tool to use, like, I don't want to say sparingly, but just, it's not the only thing. And I think if you know where to put it, it hopefully has a bigger effect,
I would go, I would definitely say that you're, if not the top, one of the top female shredder or lead guitarists that I can think of. Who do you think for the women guitarists out there is holding it down? It's really throwing fire these days.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of female guitar players that we all know, and I can name off all my friends and all the girls that are doing great that we all know. But you know what? Like, I don't want it to sound like any sort of ranking thing, because I'm a little over the whole like separation between men and women guitar players, because it doesn't mean anything. So, I think just think about who you like, who you want to listen to, who your favorite players are, because I'm glad that we're getting to the point where, all my female friends like Gretchen Menn and Nita Strauss and Courtney Cox and Nikki Stringfield, and here I am like listing people, but it's just like, it's great that we can all have a career and people don't, stop that from happening or anything like that. But I think beyond that, I think we're ready to just ask ourselves, like, who's your favorite player, and just kind of leave it at that. Because yeah, I really hope to live in a world one day where it just doesn't even occur to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's obviously, there's physiological differences that in some fields might make a difference, but I don't think this is one of them. So
I think you're one of the players that's kind of going to be the one closing the door on that era, because when you look back at the 70s and 80s, sure, there was some female lead guitarists who were at the top of the guitar game, but there wasn't that many, and it was a world dominated by men. And like you said, there's all these females now that are, especially I think with Instagram, and like social media, I think that's a way that they're, instead of just being in bands, they can be a solo artist. And I don't know, but I think you're one of the people that's closing that, kind of shutting that old conversation away.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I mean, again, it's like, I'm not like Miss Feminist, like go into it like I need to show everybody that girls can do. I mean, that was never my thought. But I think maybe in that sense, maybe I can be some sort of, I don't even want to say crusader for that, but like I can be an example just because it didn't matter to me. It's because I didn't think about that stuff. I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm a girl and a lot of girls don't play guitar, so maybe that'll be to my advantage or maybe my disadvantage someday. I just thought like, I really like music. Here's the kind of music that I like. Here's the kind of instrument that goes with that. That's what I'm going to do. And then like, it's everybody else that like puts stuff on top of that. And you're like, that's weird that they would even think about that. It's just like, it never occurs to you. And I think if that was the case, it might be easier because, I think it's just about playing with whoever you want to play with, regardless of gender, and not because of it. Sometimes I think, it's, I don't know how to feel about like the outlets that are like girl power when it comes to guitar or whatever. Like, it's a great cause and everything. And it's like, I want to be behind it. And at the same time, I'm like, is that segregating us further? Because we're still like putting them in two different categories. Like, we're still making it a separate thing. So I don't know, is it just where we're at and that's the step to get there? Or I don't know, so it's something that like, as a female, I kind of struggle with sometimes, because at the same time, like, I'm fighting for great stuff and I hope it's helping. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because like, on one hand, maybe the girl guitar power thing might influence some more girls to pick up a guitar, young kids and stuff.
Right, exactly. And that's a big thing too, so I can't argue with it. And then at the same time, like, I just hope that we're doing the right thing for the long-term goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's also, like you said, it's a little weird because you would never hear guys do the opposite. They never go like, fuck girl guitar players, guy guitar players all the time. Like, that would be super weird. Why would anybody, like, so it has really, it's a weird, both sides are pretty strange with that.
I know it's a weird thing just because it's, I mean, I guess, like, I always thought that like athletics were the was the field where people would just be like, oh, girls can't do the same thing as guys. It never even occurred to me that like anyone would have an opinion about this when it comes to music, because I'm just like, well, you see female musicians all the time, and when you grow up like with brothers, you don't think like, oh, they're playing guitar because they're guys, it's just like, just because you haven't seen another girl do it, like, never occurs to you that, that should mean anything, or that should be a reason for you to not do it or something like that. Like, I didn't feel like I had to have female role models to do it. But that's, again, because for me, it was just like, what's the difference, you know? But I guess a lot of people don't come into it like that. So
Yeah, I guess I could see if it's a singer or something like that, because that colors what you're listening to. It's a man's voice or a woman's voice. It does sound a lot different, depending on the singer, I guess. But with guitar, it really, there's no difference.
yeah. So.
Nili, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, likewise.
When is your single dropping and the video for your new song
September
coming out?
3rd.
September 3rd. So just in about 10 days or something, 11 days.
Yeah, it's real soon. It's real soon. Yeah. I'm like so ready for this video to be out. I filmed that a long time ago, and this record like has ended up taking longer than expected, and you know, you want to time the release in a way that makes sense, so I've kind of sat on this single for a while, but it's ready to be seen.
So definitely before the end of the year, you think your album will probably be out?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to hear. I can't wait to hear it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anything else you want people to check out? Any links or any websites? Any events coming up that you need people to go?
Well, if you're in Canada, I'm doing a clinic tour with Ibanez next month. And you can look on my website, nilibrosh.com, for all the dates and my merch store, and, you know, my social medias, usually just Nili Brosh. I think on Facebook it's Nili Brosh Music, but I should be pretty easy to find, hopefully.
Cool. Nili, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you on the gram.
All right, thank you.
Cool. Have a good one.
You too.
If you enjoyed this episode, of course, please share it with a friend. Hit the subscribe button right down below there, the like button. Throw a comment in there and let us know which one of her guitars you'd like to rock on the most. I think that yellow RG, that thing I see, it's always for like her knee lick of the week. She puts out a riff where she's shredding, and it's really cool. So every week she's got one of those up on her Instagram page. Of course, go to guitarguts.com where you can get the Guitar Guts shirts, my albums, all that stuff. My albums are on Spotify. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week.
Of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange? Come with us and you will see. This is our town of Halloween. This is Halloween, this is Halloween. Pumpkins scream in the dead of night. This is Halloween, everybody make a scene. Trick or treat till the neighbor's gonna die of fright. It's our town, everybody scream. This is town of Halloween. I am the one hiding under your bed. Teeth brown sharp and eyes glowing red. I am the one hiding under your stairs. Fingers like snakes and spiders in my hair. This is Halloween, this is Halloween. Halloween, 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 Halloween. In this town we call home. Everybody hands to the pumpkin song. I am the clown with the deadly face. Here in the flesh, you're gonna chase. I am the who when you call who's there. I am the wind blowing through your hair. This is Halloween, this is Halloween. Pumpkin scream in the dead of night. This is Halloween, everybody make a scene. Trick or treat till the neighbor's gonna die of fright. It's our town, everybody scream. In this town of Halloween.
Tender lumplings everywhere. Life's no fun without a good scare.
That's our dog.
But we're not
In our town of Halloween. This is Halloween, everybody scream. Won't you please make way for a very special guy? Our man Jack is king of the pumpkin patch. Everyone hail to the pumpkin